Has anyone been getting those Apple scam calls?
We got one. John did.
We got one over the past couple of days. We get like 16 in a row, like every 10 minutes. And if we were gone, there'd be like 14 messages on the answering machine.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So we haven't, I don't think we've gotten any today, but we called Spectrum and they put a, it's called Nomo Robo. It's supposed to eliminate robocalls from your phone. So it didn't work right away, but it might have kicked in today.
What are they looking for when they call?
It says something has been compromised on your Apple account and you should call this number and they'll get everything all fixed up for you.
Scam.
It's the
password, something like that, and they'll have access to your whatever, account information you have linked to it.
Hey, everybody.
I told them.
Hey, Tony.
Tony.
Al, did you move from the last time I saw you? It looks like you're in a warmer climate.
I did. I went to the beach.
I like that library look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you home now?
No, I'm still at the office.
Are you still at the office?
It was a
I see
long
you
day
still have
after-
your mask on.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I should take it off. Oh.
It's Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, 7:01 p.m. Welcome to the September Council Caucus meeting. I apologize if there's any background noise, as Village Nutrition is holding an exercise class outside behind us. So I apologize for any background noise. This meeting is being duly noticed and is being held in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code section 121.22, specific to recent amendments made in light of the current COVID-19 declared emergency, House Bill 197. Under the orders of Governor DeWine and the Director of Health of Ohio, and pursuant to Ordinance 2020-08 adopted March 16th, 2020, Council is meeting remotely via electronic means. The public was invited to view the meeting live, accessing the meeting through a link posted on the Mayfield Village website at www.mayfieldvillage.com. Mayfield Village is conducting these proceedings in compliance with all applicable state laws and regulations. Next, we have Mayor Bodnar.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I am saddened to report that our longtime resident, friend, and former council member, Tom Mari, passed away over the weekend. Tom was dedicated to our village, serving on council and many council committees from 2002 through 2017. And he always served with kindness, with intelligence, with wisdom, and with an Irish smile that could warm your heart faster than the sun shining on a green Galway pasture. During his 15 years on council, we benefited from Tom's positive leadership, and we're very thankful that he dedicated so much of his time to making Mayfield Village a better place to live. But for as much as Tom cared about this community and was a friend to all, he was first and foremost a dedicated family man, a loving and devoted husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. Tom's riches were truly in his family, which he built on a strong foundation of love, faith, and commitment. So tonight, we offer our deepest sympathies to his wife, Carol, to his grandson, Kyle, who works with us in our service department, and to every member of the Mari family. We know that Tom will live on in the love that you share, and we want you to know that we're here for you if you need anything, so please call us. Tom will be waked tomorrow evening from 3 to 7 p.m. at DeSico and Sons Funeral Home, and his mass of Christian burial will be Thursday at 11 a.m. at St. Francis of Assisi. The Mass will also be live streamed at stfrancisgm.org. And so if this was too much information, feel free to call the Civic Center. Debbie Thomas or anyone that's working at the Civic Center can give anyone more information on the details of the arrangements for Mr. Mari. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bodnar. And I echo your comments as well. Thoughts and prayers to the Mari family for the loss of Tommy. He was a special person in Mayfield Village. We have a couple of birthdays for September. Jen Jurasek and Ron Wind, both of their birthdays on September 20th. Happy birthday to both of you. Next is Shred Day information. Mrs. Betza has received confirmation that Shred Day will go forward on Saturday, October 31st from 9 a.m. to noon in the Civic Center parking lot. There will be signage and a traffic pattern. Residents are asked to remain in their vehicles and have their shredding in either their back seat or trunk to be removed by volunteers and company representatives from Shred It, who will be wearing masks and gloves. Your documents will be placed in the bin and shred on site. In the past, volunteers have returned empty boxes to you. However, for safety purposes, they will not be returning any items. So please make sure that you have your shredding in a container you want returned. Please transfer those documents into a box or a bag. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact the Civic Center at 440-461-2211. The next regularly scheduled meeting for council is on Monday, September 21st at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held virtually. The agenda will be posted on the website for public view and comment. Moving along to administration. We have the CERT agreement with Highland Heights and Mayfield Heights. Chief Carciopolo.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Council President. As discussed previously, this agreement memorializes the monetary efforts of all these communities and kind of articulates the establishment of the CERT team in legislative format. So if there's any questions that anyone has, I can attempt to field those, but that's basically why this is on the agenda.
I just have a quick question. Did you get any feedback from Mayfield or Highland Heights as far as the amounts, or do they have any comments?
All three communities have been putting in that same amount for the last 8 years, I guess, or I'd have to go back and look at when it was actually established, but Mayfield Heights actually already passed legislation, and I don't believe Highland Heights has any other changes that they want to make.
Thanks.
No problem.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief Carciopolo.
Thank you.
Next is Small Business Relief Grant Program, Mr. John Marquardt.
Thank you, Council President. As you know, the pandemic seems to show no sign of letting up anytime soon. And as a result, we began to study a little more closely the idea of helping out our business community. When the pandemic first hit back in February, March, I spoke with the mayor about possibly rolling out an assistance program. As you probably noted in the Plain Dealer, many other communities around the county and around the region jumped out pretty quickly to offer such programs. And in speaking with the mayor, we decided it was probably best to let the larger federal programs kind of play out and see how they worked before we jumped the gun and did something prematurely. So that has sort of played out over the course of the spring and the summer. Mayfield Village companies, by and large, survived, I think, better than many communities. We had about 30 companies take advantage of the PPP, several more, the economic injury disaster loans, and I want to say 3 or 4 more take advantage of the Cuyahoga County Stabilization Fund. All that, we're fortunate that we had some folks successfully apply to these programs. As you know, they've all since expired or been depleted. And given that the pandemic is still raging, we decided the time was right to come to council and request that $50,000 from our economic development fund be set aside for such a program, with a maximum individual grant of $2,500. That would, therefore reach about 20 companies. We've taken lessons from the municipalities that did similar programs earlier, sort of took best practices from them, best ideas from them, and put together the information that's in your packets tonight. And again, the hope is to make the grants meaningful enough to assist some folks that are still hanging on by a thread, but not make it so large per grant that we're only reaching 1 or 2 companies. So the information again is in your pack, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Law is working on the nuts and bolts of the mechanisms that would make this program functional. The idea is that it would be, again, funded by council from the ED fund and administered by the MCIC, sort of similar to what we do with our typical incentive programs. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a few questions. John, thank you
Yes.
for that. I think it's a great program, and I think the timing is right as well. Based on the criteria that's listed on the application, do you know how many businesses in the village fall into that criteria there? I'm just curious.
Off the top of my head, unfortunately, I don't, but I can certainly provide that to you prior to the regular council meeting. And looking at the full roster of our business community, there are between 80 and 90 companies that didn't receive aid of any kind from the federal or the county programs, most of which honestly would qualify for this program.
Okay.
But again, I don't have that exact number tonight. I apologize.
No, that's okay. And then is this open to any company that falls into that criteria? Or is it companies that have not received any kind of funding from any of these other programs?
As the program is proposed, it is open to anyone that meet the criteria, whether or not they've received federal aid.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
John, how many businesses are there in Mayfield Village?
By last count, it's roughly 120, many of whom are, one-man shops. We have a lot of sort of, I would say, services and, service providers, professionals, psychologists, dentists, doctors, things of that nature that are really 1- and 2-person shops. So that's why I think the number seems so high. If you drive up and down Beta and Wilson Mills, you may not know it, but yes, there are about 120 enterprises in the village.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, John, thanks for rolling it out. And I echo Jen's comments. It's the right timing. Are we capping it at 20 businesses or could we go above that?
Our thoughts, Councilman, would be to roll it out at $50,000. Eligible companies would be given awards sort of in a first in, first out scenario. If the demand was still there, the mayor, Diane, and I, and Ron have sort of kicked around the possibility of a round 2 if the need is there. But we feel like this is probably this number of awards may end up being the sweet spot. Hopefully it is, and folks are back on their feet without the need for further aid. But we're in the back of our heads. We're sort of thinking that there may end up being a round 2.
Around $2,000?
No, a second round. I apologize.
Oh, round. Oh, I thought it was.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then
Yeah.
You kind of answered another question. It's on the first in, first out basis. So as long as they meet the criteria, they get it, or there's a selection process to select on a pool of applicants.
Yeah, we had considered that. Some other municipalities sort of had a selection committee. And after a good deal of debate, we sort of decided that may not be in our best interest to sort of pick and choose winners. The other thing I want to mention that was discussed a great deal was whether or not to make this essentially a loan program. And then if you met the criteria, provided proof of payment for these eligible expenses, we would forgive the loan. At the end of the day, we decided, number one, we're not in the lending business and it just became too complicated. So what you see in front of you is a straight grant program, but we ask, matter of fact, we require that the backup be attached with your application. So while we're not picking and choosing, based on sort of subjective criteria, if you don't submit the objective criteria, we'll give you a call back and say, please attach X, Y, and Z to be considered. And at that point, you would essentially go back to the end of the line. So we thought that the first in, first out of complete eligible applications was probably the best way to go.
Will the funds, is it anticipated that the funds will be distributed as applicants are applying for it? Or is it going to be all distributed at a certain point in time? And will those funds be distributed before 2020 is over with?
Yeah, I think they will be, Councilwoman, distributed this calendar year. My hunch is the folks that are in need are frankly going to apply very quickly. And we would essentially come to MCIC and you with 15 to 20 completed, eligible grantees sort of in one fell swoop, so that those checks can be cut.
How are the companies or the businesses going to know about this, John?
My intent right now, Councilman, is to do an email blast, as well as probably put it on the marquee at Som and Wilson Mills. I'll probably put it on my web page as well. It doesn't get a terribly, a great amount of traffic, but it will be on there as well. So when they receive the email, it'll have a link to the application, link to the website, and instructions to call me if they have any questions on how to apply.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think we got to take it upon ourselves too, for our reaching out to businesses that we know too and making them aware of it.
Certainly, that would be appreciated, Councilman.
If I could just add to what John's already said, the program as proposed, the $50,000 will come out of our economic development fund. That fund right now has a $500,000 in it, and it's funded by a portion of our hotel taxes, as well as the franchise taxes we get from the cable companies. And it's also the same fund we pay out the annual tax rebates to the companies that have signed development agreements with us. Currently, and this happened last week, we have the CARES Act money. We've received 41,000. We're going to be getting another 20,000. And there was a Senate bill passed last week that was calling for the release of an additional $650 million. And if that's passed by the House, which we expect it to be, and signed by the governor, of that $650 million, our portion is 121,000. An allowable use for that CARES Act money is to provide economic relief to small businesses. And if we don't spend that money, we have to return it. So between now and the council meeting in a couple of weeks, we're going to wait to see what happens with that money and that Senate bill. And we might, the final plan as presented might be using that CARES Act money to pay for this grants versus our economic development fund money, and maybe even increase the amount of companies we'd be willing to offer to for this first round. But I need more information on this new Senate bill before we can make that final determination.
John, any rationale for excluding home-based businesses?
The only rationale that I really had, Councilman, was just that it was sort of harder to police and corral. We don't have as good a handle on those folks as we do what I would call brick and mortar companies. So there may well be folks operating out of their homes right now that I'm not even aware of. So it's just it's tougher for me to get my hands around and administer.
This might leading me to ask the question: if there's a home-based business, should they or should they not register with the city in order to possibly be included to help in your management?
Yeah, I believe under the building code, Councilman, and this is probably more a question for John Morelli than me, but I do believe that they are supposed to register. And that way we do have a grasp of who's out there. But I don't know that that's, functionally speaking, I don't know that that's really happened over time. I know of a couple, but beyond that, I really don't have a good handle on who's out there for sure.
It's not like it couldn't be, Councilman, it's not like it couldn't be considered when you look at what's on the application, but we'd have to see if somebody had a couple of employees, if they address some of the items. John could certainly take a look at it, but we'd have to see.
Yeah, if I could build upon that too, Mr. Coyne, the way the home occupancy code is written, I don't believe that you're permitted to have employees at all by the zoning code. So, our eligible expenses that we're proposing may not fall in line with home-based businesses anyway,
Right.
in that there's essentially no payroll other than yourself. There's no rent, there's no mortgage specific to the business. So it becomes, I think a little cloudy.
Right. Good point.
That's a great answer
Yep.
when the question comes up from one of these home-based businesses. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? And I just echo some of our other council representatives as well. This is a great program for our Mayfield Village businesses. So thank you, Mr. Marquardt.
Thank you, Council President.
Moving along to finance, Mr. Nguyen.
Yeah, the tax rate resolution, that's an annual requirement. If you recall, back in June, July, we passed an alternative tax budget, which we submit to the county, and in that budget, we lay out how our property tax dollars are going to be allocated amongst our funds. The county approves that, and once they approve it, they ask us to pass a resolution formalizing the tax rate. So that's what this is all about.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Moving along to our law department, Mr. Coyne.
Thank you, Council President. In your packet, there's an easement agreement with the East Ohio Gas Company in regard to installing the vault, which would be for a measuring and regulating station on SOM. And this, if you recall or may recall, was going to be installed in what is now Fisher Park at Thornapple Drive. And kudos to Doug Metzing for cajoling the gas company to go across the street. This is going to be a rather, I hate to say, unsightly facility, but it's nearly the size of a one-car garage, I think, Doug, isn't it? And it's something that would really be better on the other side of SOM, on the west side of SOM. So we were able to do that. So they'll have a 6-month construction easement, temporary easement to put this facility in. And that will maintain the more residential character on the east side of SOM. So if you have any questions on that, I can answer them now.
I do. Can it be put underground like it is now?
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tony, but no, the idea of these vaults is getting them out of the ground. Typically when they're in the ground, they have water issues. And like Denny, I don't know if you were familiar with the area in your neighborhood years ago, they had a lot of water in the gas line issues, and in the winter it freezes and it causes a lot of grief. So they're working hard to get these out of the ground.
So they don't.
So it makes for a better arrangement for them, better for us. I mean, the last thing we want is to have the Thornapple, Eastgate, Meadowwood areas with no gas because it freezes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So the second item I wanted to just talk about briefly is the school district property swap agreement and resolution. If you recall, last year we entered into a letter of intent with the school district to exchange some properties, which will allow the school district to realign Minor Road. The village acquired 2 parcels right on Wilson Mills Road near the high school about 8 years ago. So what this does, it will allow the realignment of Minor Road, and the school district will be paying for that new entrance. There will be some issue with the signalization at the intersection, and some of that cost will have to be addressed by the village and also Highland Heights. But the property swap agreement works out pretty well. The village would acquire a parcel of land that the school district owns just north of the Greenway Trail Center. And the parcels are very similar in size. One's 1.75 acres, the other's just over 2. Both were appraised very similarly, one at $100,000 and one at $96,500. So this is a pretty economical swap to accommodate what the school is trying to do with the entryway. So if you have any questions.
I have a couple, Mr. Coyne.
Sure.
The land, the plat that Mayfield Village would acquire in this swap, is it land that can be developed? Is it going to be for zone for business use?
It's right near the trail, the Greenway Trail near Center School, and it's adjacent to the Salt Dome. So I don't know if we're planning to really develop it, but it could be used by the village. I don't know if we have a current, proposed use, but it's surrounded by properties that the village does control.
Okay. When is the timing? Do you know, and this might be more of a question for the school, but do you know the timing of when they wanted to start the construction of this?
That's a good question. Obviously, they have to have title to the properties before they do that. They have preliminary plans, though, for the construction. I would suspect, given the timing, it wouldn't be until the fall, or not the fall, the spring or early summer of next year. But I don't know that. I don't know. Mayor, do you have any idea on their timing? I honestly don't know exactly the time.
No, I don't know what their timing is, and I do have a feeling that, as you said, with COVID, it might delay what they're putting in the driveway to line it up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, because I know that my pod training with COVID is up at the high school campus. So if that happens and they have to implement it, I didn't know how that would impact it at all. As far as the timing with that, and then the resources on the police department as well.
Right. It's typical with school districts to do certain construction like that when they're not in session. Although admittedly with COVID, if they go in and out of session, they could do it maybe at a different time. They haven't given us any firm deadline. And again, we entered into the letter of intent last year, literally a year ago.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Doug, what do you envision for that parcel?
Were you asking that question too?
That question was for Doug.
Oh, at this point, I imagine it's just going to remain green space as along the trail. I mean, it is contingent with the ODOT property that we acquired years ago. So if at some point somebody wanted to expand that or do something different at that site, that land would be available. But for the time being, I think we're just looking to make it, just keep it green. The only thing that was ever really contemplated with that was some type of like a land lab that the school had talked about using it for years ago, but that was many years ago that they talked about a land lab.
Okay.
And the last item I wanted to address to council is that the Planning and Zoning Commission met this evening, and I attended that meeting. The school district also presented final plans for a maintenance garage and an athletic storage building. The maintenance garage was reviewed by the Architecture Review Board and approved unanimously. The athletic storage building, they made a few modifications to it, but Planning and Zoning approved both of those new improvements for the high school. End of report.
Thank you, Mr. Coyne. Next is the Service Department, Mr. Metzung.
Thank you, Council President. And tonight I bring to you a request for a new air compressor, tow behind air compressor. Our old air compressor we purchased in like 1997. It was a used unit when we got it. I really don't know when the old unit, the first oil change was in 1989, so I'm guessing it was sometime in that period. But our unit died last year. We did bring it back, try to get the old one running again this year, but to no avail. So looking to replace this unit. It's a unit we use for our road department, like, blowing out the cracks and things of that nature. And then the parks guys use it to clean out all our plumbing. The end of the year, we have to blow out all our sprinklers and all the plumbing at the pool and all the restrooms and stuff. So that's what we use it for. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Metzung. Are there any other matters that come before council at this time? Okay, and just one last plug for Village Nutrition. If anybody joined us late and you enjoyed the music in our background, that is from an exercise class from Village Nutrition. They are practicing social distancing and are holding their classes outside. So if you would like to get some exercise in, I'm sure they would be happy to have you join their classes. And at this time, if there's nothing else, our meeting is adjourned, 7:31 p.m. Thank you.
Hey, take care, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Yep.